Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. Major League Baseball playoffs have started, and do you know what that means? It's time to harvest your popcorn. However, it's still not ready for eating. So how do you know when it's ready to be popped? We have the popcorn harvesting tips for you today. The plant of the week. It's widely adaptable throughout the West, the South, and up through the Carolinas and Virginia. It's Salvia, the sage plant. In particular, we are talking about the autumn sage, a real hummingbird magnet. Starting a new lawn in USDA Zone 9 right now? Are there watering restrictions thwarting your efforts? There's a way around that. It's all on episode 145 of the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. And we'll do it all in under 30 minutes. Let's go. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. You can get them in a variety of ways. You can email them in to fred@farmerfred.com. You can give us a call, 916-292-8964, 916-292-8964. I'd like it if you'd use SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com/garden basics. You just go to that website, speakpipe.com, find Garden Basics, and then yell at your computer the question. It's that easy. You don't have to yell, but try it. You just might hear your voice on the Garden Basics podcast. You can also text us at those numbers, too, that I gave you, 916-292-8964, if you want to attach pictures or so. You can leave us a message at the Farmer Fred Facebook page. It's the Get Growing with Farmer Fred Facebook page. And did I leave anybody out? Oh, just the usual culprits, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We got this question in from Kevin in Oakley, California. Debbie Flower is here, our favorite retired college horticultural professor. Oakley, not to be confused with Oakland, but in the same general area, the eastern portion of the San Francisco Bay Area. And Kevin writes in and says, "Hi, Fred. My popcorn plants look like they could be doing better. They are fading to a lighter green and starting to yellow. I fertilized them with fish emulsion and didn't notice any improvement. I water them every other day when it's hot outside. Should I thin them out? I planted them on 6-inch centers. Maybe that's part of the problem too. The other issue I can think of is sunlight. This spot gets about 6 to 7 hours of sun a day. Any advice you have would be appreciated." I've grown a lot of popcorn in my time, and Debbie, they like full sun.
Yes.
They need as much sun as possible.
You had it out here in a barrel in full sun, even reflected sun.
Yeah. And they produced ears of corn this year. I can't wait to let them cure and pop them up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was successful. And for that area, which was a very hot area, they did just fine. So I'm keeping that in mind. But yeah, what else could it be besides sunlight and the fact that he does have them planted a little too close together? They should be, I think, about 12 inches apart.
Yeah, plants that are planted too close together usually don't produce. They don't flower. So that I think they should be thinned, and he mentioned that as a possibility. And when you do thin, don't pull, just cut them off at the ground. If you pull, you'll disturb the roots of the ones that you're going to leave in the ground.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah. The other is, he talked about them fading to yellow, and that he waters every other day. And he did use fish emulsion. Fish emulsion has some nitrogen, which is the first number on any fertilizer container, and nitrogen is needed for green growth. There is lots of nitrogen in each chlorophyll molecule, and chlorophyll is the green molecule, the green pigment that we see in the plant. So I'm suspecting that it's nitrogen deficient. Nitrogen moves very easily with water. So if you put a little on and then you water and water and water every other day, I have to water things every other day in my garden too. But so that's not a problem. It's just that the nitrogen can wash out. So maybe when he waters, he could follow up with a little fish emulsion or some other source of nitrogen. As I said, fish emulsion is not very high in nitrogen. Corn is what we call a heavy feeder. It's actually a grass. It's in the same family as fescue and Kentucky bluegrass and the other kinds of grass we use in our lawns. And what kind of fertilizer do we put on a lawn? Nitrogen.
Yeah, lots of nitrogen.
Lots of nitrogen.
Yeah. And if you're using fish emulsion, and that's how I fertilized my popcorn when I'm growing it, I did apply it every week.
Every week.
Yeah, and that's still following label directions, but it's
at the rate listed on the label then.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yes, a regular feeding, and like you say, it depends really on the consistency of your soil. If it's sandy soil, that nitrogen could disappear quickly.
Right. And nitrogen, regardless of of all the nutrients we apply to plants, it moves the fastest out of the soil with water.
It can be a gas very easily.
It can also be a gas very easily, yes. If you put it on the surface, it can become a gas. In fact, there's more nitrogen on Earth in the gas form than in any other form.
A lot of good that does for plants.
Well, we could go on another...
All right, okay.
into nitrogen fixation.
Well, that would be the cover crop episode.
Yes, right.
All right. But basically, Kevin, I think this might be a situation of wait till next year because it's getting a little late in the season, even though it is early fall, but still not as many hours of sunlight in the day, and the sun is lower in the horizon. And based on my experience, the best time to harvest popcorn is when the whole stalk has turned brown and you've got 1 or 2 ears, and then you can harvest those ears, but don't pop them up immediately. They're still too moist. You're looking for a moisture content of 13 to 17%, and I found that just storing them where they can get air on all sides, so storing them in a nylon bag or something like an orange bag, something with a lot of air circulation in it, and keeping it in that bag for a week or two with the husks on, by the way, letting it dry out for a couple of weeks, and then peel off one of the husks on one after that period of time and take a handful of the kernels and put them in a hot pan on the stove that has a bit of oil in it, and say 4 kernels. Do they all pop fairly quickly, fairly in unison? Good. Then it's ready. You can start canning that popcorn or preserving it. If, on the other hand, they just sit there and burn, they're still too moist. So you want to wait until those kernels are at a point where they are popping quickly, fully, efficiently in that hot oil on the stove. And that might take another couple of weeks after you've peeled off the husks and let them again sit in a room with a lot of good ventilation. And in my estimation, the best time to harvest the popcorn is the first week of baseball playoffs in October. And by the time you're stripping the kernels off the corn cob to put in jars, that is usually in the middle of college football season, usually about the same week that USC plays Notre Dame, I've discovered. So you use that for your for your popping, and I don't know what'll happen.
And about how many days does it take to grow the popcorn plant from seed to harvest?
Seed to harvest...
You'd get that information off of a seed packet, but I wondered if you just knew off the top of your head.
Yeah, basically late June is when I usually planted it because I wanted the soil at maximum temperature for it to get off to a good start.
And then you harvest in October.
Harvest in around the first week of
July,
October.
August, September, 3.5 months or so.
So 90 days, 100 days.
Okay.
And again, wait until that stalk turns totally brown. And then you can harvest the ears.
And then you use the stalk to decorate for Halloween.
Exactly. Oh, somebody will want them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sell them.
I never had to trash corn stalks when I was growing it commercially. Somebody would come by and say, "Are you going to use those stalks? They're yours. Pull them out of the ground." And that would work. But Kevin, good job with the popcorn. If you've never grown popcorn, give it a try once, and you would grow it just like you would sweet corn, but don't grow the two together.
No.
Otherwise, you're either going to
teeth.
Yes, you'll either have broken teeth or mushy popcorn.
Right.
So I would separate the two by about 500 feet. Good luck on that if you live in suburban purgatory.
Right.
But try it growing popcorn one year instead of sweet corn. Debbie Flower, thanks for your help on this.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I always learn from you, Fred. Thanks.
We're glad to have Smart Pots on board supporting the Garden Basics podcast. Smart Pots, it's the original award-winning fabric planter. It's sold worldwide, and Smart Pots are proudly made 100% in the USA. Smart Pots come in a wide array of sizes and colors. If a frost or freeze is in the forecast, moving your frost tender plants that are in the Smart Pots that have handles make them easier to move closer to the house for added warmth, or you could even move them inside for the winter. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pots lightweight, colorful fabric containers. And don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details of discounts when you buy Smart Pots at Amazon. If you want to see them before you buy, Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers and select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. To find a store near you, visit smartpots.com/Fred. Here in the drought-parched West, as well in other parts of the country, there are water restrictions in place that limit the amount of water that you can apply to your yard. Usually it's in terms of a day per week or maybe 2 days per week, or the price of the water gets exorbitantly high if you go over a certain limit. In USDA Zone 9, if you live with those restrictions, you can probably still start a new lawn. Now, one of the tricks of starting a new lawn successfully is to keep it evenly moist until the seeds have germinated. It takes about 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so before that happens. And in order to keep the soil evenly moist, you may have to run the sprinklers for a very short amount of time, maybe a couple of minutes, 4 or 5 times a day. However, that flies in the face of the rules for some of us if you have a water company that is restricting your watering. The key, according to Steve Zion of Living Resources Company, is let your water company know that you're starting a new lawn.
A lot of people, especially here in the West, their water purveyor, the people they get their water from, have restrictions, and they say you can't water 2, 3, 4 times a day. And there are, in most places, restrictions. Part of the restrictions say that if you are, starting a new lawn, renovating a new lawn, or putting seeds of some sort down, you can do that. Often, though, you have to call your water supplier to tell them that you are doing that, because in some areas, neighbors call on their neighbors saying this guy's watering, 3, 4, 5 times a day. And then the water police come out and will fine you. Or if you convince them, and it's usually pretty easy to say, well, I'm putting down a new lawn, they'll say, okay, but you're supposed to call us first. And it just wastes the energy and time of the water purveyor by having to go out. So just call your water district if you have water restrictions, or it's only, twice a week. Let them know.
If you're thinking of growing fruit trees, or maybe you already have your own backyard full of fruit trees, well, you probably have a million questions. Like, which fruit trees will grow well where I live? What are the tastiest fruits to grow? How do I care for them? What are the most important things to know when starting a backyard orchard? Well, the good news is those answers are just a click away with the informative videos that you can find at davewilson.com. That's Dave Wilson Nursery, the nation's largest grower of fruit trees for the backyard garden. At davewilson.com, you'll also find planting tips, taste test results, fruit variety recommendations, and links to nurseries in your area that carry Dave Wilson fruit trees. Your harvest to better health begins at davewilson.com. Every week, we like to talk with Warren Roberts out at the UC Davis Arboretum, finding out what plant is putting on a show currently. And now that we are in fall, there are plenty of plants with the word autumn in their name, and not the least of which is a beautiful sage plant, a Salvia, with the name autumn sage. Warren Roberts is here to tell us all about it. And Warren, I love salvias. They're such easy care plants, don't require much care. About the only thing you have to do is keep them in check.
That's true. And occasionally a little information. I guess you'd call that sage advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that of the large genus Salvia, I don't know how many species now, because a number of plants from other genera are now being put into Salvia. For example, rosemary is now Salvia rosmarinus, and even Russian sage or Persian sage is now a salvia. I think it's called Salvia yangi. So its tribe increases.
Yeah, what happened to Perovskia?
Well, it gets now a salvia.
All right.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with it.
No, it's hard to keep. It's hard to keep up with. To me, it's amusing. To me, it's fun. I because it's based on science. It's worthy of our respect.
Why? Is it based on science or is it based on scientists?
Well, scientists, real scientists, if they are true scientists, practice science, which is evidence-based knowledge. So anyway, salvia, back to salvia.
Okay, back to salvia, even though we could have a discussion about how plants get their name. And it sounds like when they're trying to nominate a saint in the Catholic Church, you have bishops arguing with each other about the pros and cons. But
Yeah.
This guy, Greg, Salvia greggii, the autumn sage. Tell us about that.
All right. Well, just an aside, determining saints is based more on, how should I put it, religion and not science. But
Yes.
But the naming of plants is supposedly based on science.
If you say so.
So, if I say Salvia greggii was named for a botanist who was active in the 19th century, that is to say the 1800s, and particularly active in collecting in the Southwest. I don't have a lot of information off the top of my head about him, but there are a number of plants that are named for Mr. Gregg. Salvia greggii, Greggii, called autumn sage because it is in bloom in the autumn, but we found in the mild climates that we have here in Central California that Salvia greggii is in bloom almost all of the year. There is another species rather closely related to it, Salvia microphylla, from the same part of the world that Salvia greggii is native, which is to say from south central Texas and western Texas down across New Mexico, and including Arizona, into Mexico itself. Salvia greggii is not native to California, but it's very widely used in horticulture here.
And is widely adaptable.
Yes, it is widely adaptable. It is from an area that gets summer rain. So in areas that have Mediterranean climates around the world, you will need to give it some watering during the dry season for it to be successful. I've noticed that on some years where you've had, in Mediterranean climates, where you have had a good winter rain and there's plenty of water stored in the soil, that they can make it survive through the summer without much water at all. However, if you want it to be successfully blooming and flowering and growing, you do need to irrigate it during the dry seasons, the hot, dry seasons of the year. Flower colors range from a kind of I would say a rosy pink, kind of a dark rosy pink is the common color, I think, to pure red. It also ranges into the pinks, and there are even pure white selections. In fact, one of the easiest ones to grow, we have found, is the white flowered form. And there are some with multicolored flowers as well. In Mexico, especially in the mountains of Nuevo León, which is the state of Mexico where the capital is Monterrey. I say that roll the R because there's an extra R in Monterrey in Mexico, whereas the one in California just has one.
So you don't need to roll one.
No, you just flip one and you roll two. Luckily, I learned to speak, pronounce Spanish when I was a little tiny kid, so it's come in handy. Anyway, Salvia greggii is, the management of Salvia greggii is when it starts getting a little bit, sprawly, or it is not looking too good. Pruning the plant is a good idea, but always leave some green leaved stems on the plant. If you cut it back to stubs with no leaves, that's often a death sentence. So the best idea is then prune it lightly. I think that would be the way to say it, and you'll have a very successful plant. One of the groups of hybrids between Salvia greggii and Salvia microphylla is called Salvia multiplication sign, which means hybrid jamensis or humensis, Jamensis. And there are a whole group of selections from that cross. The hybrid species occurs naturally in the mountains of Nuevo León. And people have gone into that area and found almost a rainbow of possibilities, of color possibilities, or more than possible, they're actual, that have been brought into cultivation. A number of other species in that area have added to the hybrid, I guess you would call it, history of the autumn sages. I won't go into those right now, but leave it to say that there are a lot of beautiful garden-worthy plants in the Salvia greggii, the autumn sage, and its hybrids.
And if you plant one, you can take cuttings and make plants for your friends. They root very easily.
Yes, and if you like hummingbirds, if you have hummingbirds in your part of the world, Salvia greggii is a natural. The salvia called Salvia microphylla in Mexico is called mirto, M-I-R-T-O, which means myrtle originally, but I think the plant was named because it has fragrant leaves.
That's true.
Yes, and that's been cultivated in the West for a long time. The name for the hummingbird in the areas where that species is named is chupa mirto, means that it sucks on the flowers of the Salvia microphylla. And one of my gardeners, when she saw the Salvia microphylla and Salvia greggii in my garden, she says, mirto, she said. And then she says, look, there's a chupa mirto. There was a hummingbird fulfilling the story. So a great plant for attracting hummingbirds, a beautiful garden plant, graceful flowers all around winter.
I could have a whole garden filled with sages of salvias, including the autumn sage. They are all that beautiful.
Yes, and now including rosemary and Russian sage, too.
Right. Autumn sage, Salvia greggii. Warren Roberts is with the UC Davis Arboretum and Public Garden. He is their superintendent emeritus. For more information about that beautiful spot in Yolo County and parts of Solano County, visit their website, arboretum.ucdavis.edu. The UC Davis Arboretum and Public Garden. Warren, thanks for the sage advice today.
You're certainly welcome, Fred, anytime.
Because there are so many demands on your time these days, well, I like to keep the Garden Basics podcast to under 30 minutes. But still, there's a lot more to tackle on all the garden subjects we bring up on the podcast. So for that and a lot more, we're starting up the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter. It'll be on Substack. It'll go into more details about what you just heard on the latest podcast. So yes, it will be a good supplement for the Garden Basics podcast, but there'll be a lot more garden-related material and, probably pictures of my dogs and cats as well. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter. It's on Substack. And best of all, it's free. There's a link in today's show notes, or just go to Substack.com and do a search for the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred. That's Substack.com. The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred newsletter. Did I tell you it's free? It's free. Garden Basics comes out every Tuesday and Friday. It's brought to you by Smart Pots. Garden Basics is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, Google, Podcast Addict, CastBox, and Pocket Casts. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and leaving comments. We appreciate it.